So I keep coming back to the boy band thing because it was just such a thrilling thing to have all these people on a stage last year. And I don't know whether it's something we said, or I said. I don't want to take any credit, I do. But two of the people are no more, because the feedback we were getting from you last year is that there's just too much going on when it came to quality control. People were talking about having a TDA inspection, followed by a monitor inspection, followed by a CQC inspection, and it was driving some of you slightly nuts. Well, those two members of the boy band are not with us anymore. We haven't got TDA and monitor, but what we do have is a new lead singer, if you like. We have a new organisation which is going to sit. And the way I see it, and I'm not of your world, so forgive me if this is a bit rudimentary, is that I sort of see Simon Stevens sitting at the top of this pyramid, and I have in my mind these 44 STPs, which are sort of at the bottom of the hierarchical pyramid, and in the middle of this sandwich, you've got Jim Mackey, who's got to make the policy work on the ground with these 44. He took his position on the 1st of November in 2015. He is the Chief Executive of NHS Improvement. This is the first time he will be addressing conference. Please give a very warm welcome to Jim Mackey.
Thanks, Anita. I'm not sure about the typecasting on the beast thing, but that were the HSJ picture that you use all the time. I'd like to move on from that. So anyway, I'm glad you're all here after the match. I thought you'd all be gone by now, but I'm hoping you've all had a few pints and you'll take it easy on me. So I'm going to just pick up on a few things. There's been a very strong theme through the day on a few things. So the first one, standout, which I'll cover, the NHS is the best in the world. So whichever way you look at it, you're doing a fantastic job. We've delivered collectively things that other systems wouldn't think are possible, but we've got to do more in the next period. Second thing I would pick out is we can't go at the pace that we've been going. Naturally, some of the things that we have to do take a long time, but we now don't have time. So we have got to find a different way of accelerating some of the things that are going on across the NHS and sharing them and spreading them. And the final thing, which I'll end on, is we forget that the NHS is a people business at our peril. So we're a huge employer. We're absolutely completely dependent on everything our staff do, and we need to get much better at engaging with patients. And when we're talking about variation, for example, you've just got to talk to the people who've been sat in outpatients and explain the same thing 5 or 6 times with people who don't have the notes, who are going to ask them to do something that happened last month or 3 months before, etc. We've got huge variation and waste to go at. So that really is our challenge. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the challenge, a bit about the money, as you'd expect. As in the period that we're in, I can't talk specifically about specific numbers, but I'm happy to talk about where we are and what might happen next, a little bit about STP and then about the people. So I've just mentioned, we know this is difficult, so I'm not going to stand here and say this is all really easy. We just need a big bag of fairy dust and it's all going to be lovely. We've got a load of heavy lifting to do over this next couple of years. I'm going to show you in a minute some examples where people have actually achieved great things. In all of your institutions, you'll have things that are absolutely unbelievable going on, but you'll also have next door things that are less than satisfactory, and they'll not know what next doors do. And it's absolutely same institution to institution. It's the same system to system. You all know this. We've all got to try and do is connect these things, and NHSI will do its level best, as will all of the arm's length bodies, to support you in that endeavour. We're about to start a consultation on our oversight framework, which will look something like this, as we talked about in February at the launch event. What I would say is this is a work in progress. We've done a lot of work with CQC recently to try to respond to some of the things that have just been said about how do we make this a single definition of success. So we can't crack this in one go from where we are, but by the end of this financial year, going into next year, we want to be in a position where NHS organisations are viewed in one way by all of us, and all of us sharing intelligence, resource, opinion, etc., so that you're not in a position where we think you're fantastic and CQC think you should go into special measures, or vice versa. So a lot of you have said that's a big issue. We've recognised it as an issue. Please respond to the consultation process when we start it. Just some examples. And so that there's a danger we overdo these things. There's also a danger that many of you are sat in the room with something fantastic we could talk about. It could be I could be here for 3 or 4 hours tonight just talking about fantastic things that are going on. This is absolutely unbelievably remarkable. So it's right that we keep talking about it. What Sir Andrew Morris managed to pull off in Heatherwood and Wexham Park in a very short space of time. So the before and after signal here, and importantly, if you ask the staff what the before and after is, and you ask the patients what the before and after is, it's unarguable. What's hard to understand is why we're not replicating an awful lot of this across the NHS more rapidly. From a financial point of view, I spend a lot of time, as you can imagine, talking to people about why things are very difficult and impossible. And a few weeks ago, I spent some time in Bolton with Jackie Beanie and a team to go through their journey and start the year from their point of view into this financial year. And this, in my view, is the best standalone financial turnaround in the NHS. There's others that have got bigger value, there's others that have done great things, but this is an organisation that almost entirely looked inward at itself, had a really good talk to itself and sorted it out financially in a short space of time, and actually improved performance, improved staff satisfaction and patient satisfaction at the same time, all hand in hand with this list of cost reduction, which you'll all recognise as just good old-fashioned practical stuff that you're all trying to deal with day to day. It is absolutely possible. We've got an ambulance service in the West Midlands that every day pretty much delivers its standards, day in, day out, in a kind of bomb-proof way. It doesn't matter what happens in the system, it manages to deliver. Really fantastic. And people were talking earlier on about vanguards and ACOs and stuff. This time last year I was speaking in a different part of the conference about ACO, and there's some really good signs in the Vanguard programme of people really starting to have an impact. Now, all of you with more of a scientific background than me will say these things take years to be able to prove, but there are signs in some of them now of real impact. So this is the Eastern North Hearts nursing home Vanguard, which is shown in the graph on the right. A real impact of patients going to A&E from homes. We should be replicating it across the country. And then in terms of success regime, the work that Angela Pedder and Ruth Carnell are doing down in Devon is really starting to take shape. And there's real sense that the system has got a plan for the future, and it's really starting to get energised about delivering it. So as been said lots of times earlier on, the NHS is absolutely fantastic, the best in the world. We should all be proud of the achievement. And you'll see there just a snapshot of some real, tangible improvements in stroke mortality and cancer survival rates, etc., over the last few years. The point of this is to prove, especially if you look at MRSA, 15 years ago we all thought getting on top of MRSA was impossible. I sat through dozens of board meetings, clinical discussions, meetings with microbiologists, meeting with the geriatricians about what was possible on this and C. diff, and largely as a service we cracked it. Once we put our mind to it, once we got energised with the staff around the evidence, and we put our full force with full engagement, with full staff and patient engagement behind it, we made fantastic progress. We need to do that on a much more serious scale now for this next period. So this could be a suicide session about the money. It's not going to be. We ended the year, as already been said, last year in the provider system with a deficit of about 2.4 billion. The underlying position was higher. We've got the transformation fund that doesn't quite cover that, as was covered in the HSJ a few weeks ago. We've still got work to do. And what I would say on that is, that was portrayed as, we've got to a certain point, so let's fold our arms and say that's enough. That's not where we are. That's not where you are. We're going to go at this every day of the week, all of us together, keep generating new ideas, keep trying to learn from each other, keep trying to improve the position. There won't be a point where this is fixed, because it can't be. We've got years of this. Good organisations do this all the time, and our best organisations in the NHS are absolutely at this all of the time. So it's a work in progress. Simon, Mark, Ahmed and I met the other day, and we talked about how to improve the planning process going forward. So had some early thoughts about we should have a bit of a drains up on the last round, learn from it, fix those things, and see if we can start a planning process maybe in the autumn that locks down medium-term plans in a real way by Christmas, so we don't spend valuable delivery time arguing and arm wrestling about threatens halfpenny at the margins, which is what we all do. I've done 30 years of it. I'm sick to death of it. I'm sure you're sick to death of it. Now is a time for action rather than planning. And the STP thing, I think, is, for the first time in a very long time, a real opportunity for people to really confront the long-term stubborn issues. And across the 44 footprints, there is fantastic evidence of people really getting the difficult stuff on the table. Actually fixing them is a harder task, isn't it? But we're seeing real progress there, and you can feel the pressure building up as people come in with plans in the next few weeks, and then hopefully we can all be getting on and delivering them. And we've got lots of challenges with all of this, and I've spent a bit of time in the last few weeks talking to chief exec groups and politicians and other people about expectations. The danger with the STPs is we think it's going to solve absolutely everything in the world. So we need to be a bit careful about expectation. But if we leave those processes with completely, totally fragile clinical configuration at the end of it, we've missed the point. If we leave these processes with completely unrecruitable workforce scenarios, we've missed the point. We have to really try and get our head around how we use technologies, as already been discussed. And importantly, we've got to make the money work. So these processes aren't give us a huge bid for capital. There'll be a bit of capital investment required, absolutely, but it's not a bidding process. It's a process where you, in your system, identify the key issues. We help you get there. Will be a bit of challenge, but don't wait for us to anoint a plan. If you've got a great plan, get on with it. But I would also, just at the bottom, we should reflect on the tensions in all of this. So none of this is easy. We still have the law. If we're going to make a big change, we still have to engage and consult with the public, and that's absolutely right. We still have to navigate competition law, and we've got some really good examples now with a competition team in NHSI where they've allowed people locally to think through solutions and help fix how we navigate that system. We've absolutely got to fix the short versus the long-term thing. So again, frustratingly, people talk about these things as binary. I can either deliver today or I can deliver in 15 years' time. We've got to do both. And going back to Ian's points earlier on in the workforce, one of the things that worries me about the workforce stuff is we need to make decisions now that will have an impact in 15 years' time. That doesn't mean we have to ignore them and avoid them. We have to make them. But we have to build a bridge between the short and the long term. So just pause a little bit about the people. It's been mentioned completely coincidentally lots of times today. The NHS is a huge employer, the 5th, I think, biggest employer in the world, which is just enormous. Nearly all of your organisations are huge by anybody's standard. It's the best in the world. Every 36 hours we deal with over 1 million patients. The numbers are mind-boggling. And we should be absolutely thoroughly proud and feel privileged that we're part of people's lives at these key times in their lives. It's a people business. And if you look at some of the results over the years, patients have actually become more satisfied over this last very tense period. So whilst there's been a squeeze on resource, there's been pressure on operational issues, etc., you've managed to do that in a context of improving patient satisfaction. But there's still lots to do. So, some of these numbers at the bottom are really shocking, actually. So 41% of patients didn't receive any information about the impact of side effects. There's a cost impact of that. There's an experience impact of that. There's an anxiety impact of that. There's lots of things that we can still be going at. From a staff point of view, as well, with the squeeze, staff experience has actually improved in lots of ways, and some institutions have delivered really dramatic change. So again, I'm not going to run through all these thinking of time, but what I would say, if you think of the things to still go at, just over 56% of staff say they feel they're able to make improvements in their workplace. Only 72% of staff feel valued by their organisation. 28% don't. It's huge on our scale. And is it right that only 73% of staff agree or strongly agree with the care that their organisation provides? There's absolutely still a lot for us to go at there. So to conclude, I'm looking forward to the Roy Keane questions in a minute. You've done a great job. The NHS has done a fantastic job, and in many ways, we wouldn't believe we could have delivered what we've done in this last few years. But it's not done. Money and day-to-day pressures are real. You live with them every day. They're not going to easily go away. We've got to get clever about how we fix them. But we must also focus on the long term. And I think one of the big standout things for me today is we're getting close to the point where we've got to stop talking and we've just got to do it. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So again, I know this is the first time that many of you will be meeting Jim, and if you have questions, please just put your hands in the air and we'll get mics to you. It's a really huge weight on your shoulders, a really big challenge. We saw, Anita Charlesworth's slides and even your own lay out the challenge ahead. Of all of the challenges that you face, which is the one that's keeping you up at night the most?
I think what's already been said. When I was in Northumbria, the thing I worried about most was the workforce. It was the worry that at some point I was going to get up and we couldn't staff a rota. It was something had fallen to bits because we couldn't recruit to it, and we were in a relatively strong position. That's the thing I worry about, actually. I think the money, people are trying really hard, will make a big impact. Performance will improve. Whether we can improve at the pace we need to is another thing. But the real big worry, I think, is the workforce. I mean,
there are things that just haven't been mentioned thus far when it comes to workforce. And I know not everything is either on your plate or in your control, but just how do you react to these things? So, I mean, we're in the very real situation. I think Unison did some work on this, where a lot of NHS workers, particularly in London, are up to 30 miles away from the hospital that they work in because they can't afford, on the wages that they get from the NHS, to live any closer to their hospitals. So Ian can do what Ian can do, but if they can't live near their hospitals, what are you meant to do about it?
Yeah. So colleagues are working on a plan to try and utilise NHS estate better to provide more affordable housing for NHS staff. So some DH colleagues and other specialist colleagues are working on that now. It's not in the category of it being fixed next week or next year, but it's absolutely on the agenda. I think we're in for 22,000 units over the next few years, so there's a big focus on it. It's one of those things that's very regional, so it's not an issue at all in the North East, maybe not an issue here, but in London and some of the other big places, it absolutely is an issue.
Okay, and one of the things that struck me that the Secretary of State did not talk about at all this morning was social care, which very much was in all of our minds yesterday. You can't have one hand clapping in this, can you?
No, so I think a couple of things. One, other colleagues have said at some point we as a nation need to have a discussion about social care and agree what we're going to do about it, and try and take the politics out of that. I don't think anyone really disagrees with that. I think we just need to find a way of doing it at the right time. But in practical terms, so you think the short-term thing, I spoke to a good chief exec on Tuesday who had spent a while looking at the delayed transfers of care issue and felt a bit paralysed by it, and broke through that and is actually now going into care home provision themselves. They're going into home care provision themselves or in partnership with others. And that's happening, it's breaking out in lots of parts of the country. And practically, financially, I would say on that, if you've got a ward full of people who should be in another setting, that'll cost you about £3 million a year. If home care is the problem, it might be £1 million. So it might, by necessity, in normal times, come from the local authority. But there's a business case there for the NHS to step into that space and get on with it. So I think I would like to see more people take a bit of a risk on that and try and solve it. And if it doesn't work, try something else. But let's just stop watching it.
How much muscle do you have to actually say to somebody, look, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you that you put £1 million towards that social care budget?
Yeah, so we're going to try not to do that. I think I'm a big believer in devolution. I'm a big believer in local boards, in clinicians making their own decisions. If we get to the point where we've exhausted that and there's an obvious solution that hasn't been explored, we've got legal powers we can enforce if we have to, but that has to be the last tool or instrument in the box.
Let's take some questions from the floor. Number 3, you're the first up.
Hi, I'm Jo Leahy. I'm the Clinical Chair of Telford and Wrekin CCG. I was a bit disappointed that you put people last on your list of factors, because actually surely people are our biggest resource. And one of the things that worries me is that the STPs could be used as yet another way of beating up good people who are trying to do our best for the communities that we serve. And I think there's plenty of evidence out there that one of the things that most incentivises people at work is a sense of autonomy and control over their work. And that if we were actually given something to do and allowed to get on with it without being constantly micromanaged, and this has come up before, that we would do a lot better. And that a sense that bullying and intimidation doesn't work.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you want to take that?
So I absolutely agree with you. I've obviously failed from a presentational point of view. I wanted to end with that being the big thing. That's what we've really got to try and embrace. So I agree with everything you've said.
Question from here, number 1. If you could stand up, the lights are very dazzling. It'd be nice to see who you are asking a question. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hello, hi. My name is Oliver Newbold. I'm from NHS England. PBR has been excellent over the years in improving patient access. I don't think anybody could deny that. Given the need for better integration is one of the common themes we've seen emerging, do you think PBR is the way forward in the future? And if it's not, when are we going to see some substantial changes that stop people just chasing income rather than reducing cost?
I think you rightly say PBR worked for what it was supposed to work for. And as Lord Pryor said earlier on, there's lots of places want to try new systems such as ACOs, etc., which I think will definitely bring new approaches to financial reward and incentivisation. So where I am with that is I wouldn't throw it completely out, but what I would say is we need to help systems find new mechanisms, work with them to develop new mechanisms that support what they have to deal with in their patch. It's no longer the case that PBR should be the only instrument, but it might still be the case in some areas where we've got large backlogs that it's still the thing that needs to be used in a small way. I'd really like to see people coming up with ideas to incentivise discharge, for example, with other partners. So what part of our challenge is in the next couple of months working out what we do from a pricing point of view so that we don't make all this more complicated in the next round. Pick a few things that could be useful and put a huge effort into them.
We'll take one more question. Number 5 at the back, please.
Hi, my name's Nick Goodman from a company called MES. What's your view of membership? Lots of provider trusts have many thousands of members, and under your leadership, is there a new or renewed energy there, an opportunity for using members?
Yeah. It's in my whole life we had at one point 90,000 members. The last time I looked, the combined FT membership was larger than the two main political parties. It's a huge untapped resource, and I think it's been hard to think about that because we've all got lots to do. But on some of the earlier points in terms of public engagement, testing models, you know, those sorts of things, we need to really think about how we use those people who've taken the effort to step forward and engage with them properly. I see very little evidence of that across the country.
Jim, if I may, can I ask the last question? You've got so much to do, but you've signed up for 2 years only. Why is that?
Thanks for that. when I agreed to do this, I'm a simple NHS man, and I'd been part of an organisation that had built itself from a quite difficult place over 20 odd years to quite a strong place, and I love it. So, but I completely recognise there's a need for someone to put a long shift in. So I'm seeing this as a bit of a shift for the NHS. I'm going to absolutely chuck myself at this for as long as I can. If when we get to 2 years there's a way of extending it, and that's right all around, we'll have a look at that. I'm not going to leave a job that I feel is half done. I think in 2 years it's going to be really hard to fix all of this stuff. I'm a delusional optimist, but I think that's a stretch even for me. So I'm going to give this the best shot I can. The 2-year thing is flexible either way, and I might get chucked out in a few weeks' time, so who knows.
Thank you ever so much for your time and being so candid in your answers. I've got something that I really wish I didn't have to tell you. While we've been in session, it has been announced that Jo Cox, the MP for Batley and Spen, just down the road from where we are, has unfortunately died. So our thoughts are with her and with her very young family. We will see some of you this evening. There is the dinner tonight, the NHS Confederation dinner, and we will reconvene tomorrow morning. See you then.